Get some soap. Good. All right. I will call the Board of Aldermen work session to order. And we will hear from the chamber. We get both of you or just Erica?
You're gonna get both of us. Here.
Okie dokie. Well,
Is this on already?
I hope so.
Okay. Um, so as you know, we've got an MOU that we've been working with you guys to promote Smithville and all the events. And we've got a few website pages, maybe. Go with the calendar first. So as you can see there, the community calendar stays pretty full. I do try to keep that up to date as much as possible. If somebody wants to add an event, somebody from the community, they can do that. There's a button towards the top that says add an event. If they're not a chamber member, they do need to fill out a form just so that that event can be approved to be on there so that we can make it sure it's appropriate. And then members, they have to sign in to be able to add an event to the calendar. And then the next one is going to be the business startup page. So we've worked on that to make sure everything's up to date for, you know, new businesses wanting to start up, what licenses they need, what permits, who they need to contact if there's not, you know, something they can fill out online. So that's all on there with links. And then at the very bottom, there's a button to where if they wanted to print it off, there's a printable version of that. And then the weekly newsletter, The Scoop, goes out every week. Anybody who wants that in their email inbox can get that. If they don't want to sign up for it, if they'd rather just go to our website and look at that, then there is a up towards the top under the chamber, there's a spot to where the scoop is listed so that they can check that out every week. We do have, if you scroll down just a little bit further, we do have the spot in there for the updates for the city. I've been running the Citizens of the Academy part in there since it has been opened. Things like that stay in there until it's closed. And there are, so I believe if I did it right, so if they click on that, it goes directly to where they need to apply. So I try to keep that. And then the alderman meetings, that's updated as well anytime you guys have a meeting. So, and then the business retention visits, we've had 5 so far this year. We're working on 2 for July, and Becky's going to speak on that more if she's ready.
Hi, everybody. I'm Becky Pendleton-Meek. I'm the president of the Chamber of Commerce here in Smithville. So just to kind of let you know where we started at, towards the end of last year, we got together with Cynthia and Gina, Erica and I all got together and we kind of discussed what a business retention visit looks like. We compared some different business retention models that different cities had, kind of developed one that we wanted to pursue on our own. So then beginning in January of this year, we started the business retention visits. And that was with city staff as well as somebody from the chamber every month met together with a business here in our community. We just wanted to see what can we help you with? What can the city help you with? What can the chamber help you with to make your business more successful? So far we have done PACs, we've done dentistry at Smithville Marketplace, motorcycle closeouts, Smithville Ford, and Taylor Plumbing. And if you kind of look at those, we tried to do a little bit in the first year of kind of a diverse group. So when you think of PACs, you know, that was a business that had been rebranded at one point. They used to be a True Value. Dentistry at Smithville Marketplace, that's a new business here in town. Smithville Ford, another new business here in town. And Taylor Plumbing, that's a business that's been around for quite a while in the community. So we wanted to see, you know, are there any trends or anything with that? Basically, what we got from most everybody, number one is, I'm really surprised that you guys took the time to come out here and talk to us and that you're concerned about what we would need as a business. Some of them had affiliations with other chambers in the area or in bigger cities, and they said, we have never had this before. which really was kind of surprising to me. And I kind of thought a little bit more and reflected on that. And, that's good that we're kind of paving the way and letting them know that we are concerned about how they perform in our community. We want to make sure that they stay businesses here. So some of the other things that we landed on, I know that we had talked about marketing. There's a couple businesses that said, hey, we got some new stuff out here and we think that it would be a good idea if you helped us market that in the community. And we said, that's not a problem. All of them said that they had sales at or better than their business plan expected them to be. So I thought that that was very promising as well. Every one of them named it one of the challenges for them is finding workforce. And I've heard that struggle all around town. So that wasn't just with the businesses there, but I hear that quite often. So that's our plan, is to try to do one business every month. Like Erica said, we're going to hit 2 in July. June just wasn't a good month for us. A lot of planning going on with the city and stuff like that. So we decided we would just wait on June and do 2 in the month of July. But we wanted to let you know where we were at with the business retention visits and what information we had kind of gleaned from those. So did you guys have any questions about anything that we're doing? It's busy, but it's all on there. So I will say that.
I appreciate the update with doing the merchant visits.
Yeah.
I think that'd be very beneficial and very encouraging. It's what
It
you've
is.
done.
It's good to hear what the businesses have to say, and more than anything, it's their outlet to be heard as well. I mean, I don't think anyone from the city has ever came around before, as far as I know. So I don't think anyone has, and I don't think anyone really has from the chamber formally. I know there's been some side visits maybe here or there, but nothing that's been done formally. So sometimes an elf, you never know. So
I have a question. Go
Yes.
ahead, Dan. Did you have something? So, we had a brief discussion about this in our retreat. And one of the things I did do, after discussion with the mayor, is I went and looked at, just kind of a broad level of other, chambers of commerce around different places in the country and their relationship with the city. And this is definitely not by any stretch uncommon at all. One of the things I did notice that seemed to be common with them, though, is that their closeness to the Economic Development Committee. And I guess just for discussion, maybe as we will go through this, is maybe a joint liaison, something in the future with the EDC committee. And also, it looks like there's a common denominator of an update every so often, like you're giving us now, but more frequently. In the bigger cities, it's like every month, right? I don't think that as a city like small like this, that it'd be beneficial, but it might be beneficial to look at something like every 3 months or something. I'm not every quarter. I'm
Erica
still not
sits
there.
on the EDC and gives an update every month.
Right, and give that, okay. And that's a real, what I've seen, a real important part is a joint piece between, and when the communication side, right? As far as with Economic Development Committee, Erica Winston with the Economic Development Committee is a good piece too, to provide that, that jail kind of between, what we're doing and what's going on. So anyway, I echo what,
She
Yeah.
reports back to the chamber board what the EDC is doing. And then we have her report on our behalf as well to the EDC, what the chamber is doing as well each month.
Great.
So.
Yeah, and we also had that lunch and learn a couple months ago now. We are working on another one coming up, the EDC and the chamber partnering on that. And then I even meet with the Clay County EDC quite frequently to kind of make sure that, Smithville's with them as well. So
that's great. And I
Erica's
echo,
also our representation on the Mizzou Extension Board. for the
I'm sorry,
city.
Mayor, can you say it again?
She's the city representative to the Mizzou Extension Board, to the MU Extension Board. So she sits on that board as well for us.
And Alderman Russell, I would point out as well in the memo we noted, and I think we may have noted at the retreat, but the materials that the EDC worked with our Parks and Recreation for distribution at the county parks as well as Smiths Fork Park to provide information on events that are going on downtown throughout the summer. Erica was involved in creating that as well. So she's worked on that in her role as the chamber exec, but also as a member of the EDC. I will also note, I'm not sure if the whole board knows, Eric and I also meet on a monthly basis just to kind of make sure we both know what's going on in both instances and where we are with those items as well. It's also a kind of a check-in and touch point as to where we are on their commitments to the contract.
That is great. That's great. That bond kind of, if you will, that's very good. And I also want to echo what Alderman Wilson said about how I've seen just in past several years that develop the scoop, right? I think it's a good tool and useful for people to know. And I mean, promotion wise, people, new coming into town, whatever, check out, go to here, whatever would be very good. So one more question is the chamber and the benefits, is it all inclusive to every small business? Is it just, I mean, it's all inclusive to everybody? Is there something they have to pass or do? Is the ones that aren't included?
So the community calendar is open to anybody in the community. Member benefits are strictly to chamber members. So like if they wanted to put something in the newsletter, they would need to be a chamber member to do that.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
So, Becky, I just want to say it's a testament to your leadership the last couple of years. I've seen the board really come together. Erica in her leadership as executive director. I think the video updates, when I can't make a ribbon cutting, you guys are very quick to put a short video segment up of that, and it's fun to see that. I think video has been around a long time, but you're utilizing that well. And I mean, I'm excited just to continue to see businesses come to Smithville and a lot of people don't know you're the first people that a lot of times they'll contact. And we also, I don't know, the question I do have is, do we still have that kind of that ambassador program? So as a new business comes into town, we try to reach out to them, or is that just on a case by case basis?
Usually Erica does reach out to them, solicit them for membership in the chamber. A lot of times we're a good liaison, like with Smithville Ford. I know they had a lot of questions about, who do we contact if we're looking for employment for mechanics coming down the road. So we provided them with a lot of names and numbers who people that they could contact within the community and whatnot to kind of help them prosper as a business. So
How many phone calls do you get about the garage sale in a year?
Enough. Yeah, we usually get the phone calls about the garage sale, any events that are going on. Most people tend to think that they're chamber event, but I guide them in the right direction if I cannot help them answer the questions that they have. And then I lost my train of thought, sorry.
okay.
The video interviews that you do with small business owner too, I think are pretty neat.
Yes, we actually had a chamber member wanted to do that, and we talked with Carol from the school so that the students who are interested in videoing and interviews and things like that could help out with that, so that we're bringing those students in. So
I will also highlight how much staff appreciates the calendar that you all manage for us, because we have traditionally gotten a lot of requests to include things on the city calendar. And we've tried to be very careful about that because we don't want to miss one event or something happens. So we direct everyone to the chamber page. So that has now become our community portal of community events. And that's been a great asset for the community.
One additional point that some people may not know, so our engagement as a city with the chamber and of course the board independently made the decision to make Erica full-time. So I think that's been a game changer as well. There just wasn't enough hours in the week, and I know Erica would say there's still not enough hours in the week to get everything done, but I just want to applaud the board for making that decision to make that executive director full-time.
Felt like it was the right decision to do. And I think that, in the past, there hasn't been a really strong relationship between the city and the chamber. But I think if you look at the big picture, I think that is what we need. We need to work together to accomplish the goals. And that's what makes all of our businesses in the community succeed. It's when we all work together. So.
Yeah, I appreciate I guess I could schedule a monthly meeting instead of our every other day meetings, but we've worked really well together on the legacy fund dinner and things like bringing the awards dinner back. It had kind of died off. So, yeah.
I do my best to get to some, like the Northland Regional Chamber, ribbon cuttings, after hours, things like that, just to help promote Smithville and our businesses here in town. So,
Did you
try
recently
to-
graduate too?
I did graduate their leadership, academy, I think is what it's called.
Yep.
I graduated, and then I'm helping with their, golf tournament in July. So if anybody's interested.
We now have 2 graduates of the Northland Leadership Academy,
Yes.
hopefully a 3rd next year. So thank you for attending that for us.
Any other questions?
Thank you,
Okay,
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Jack, you get extra time now. You- You've only got like a 16-slide PowerPoint, so I mean, it might take us a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm hopeful that it doesn't take that long, but we'll see.
Underneath where it says June 2024.
Down here, I'll keep it
Yeah.
close to it so I can find it there. Thank you all. You have a very long and detailed memo in your packet. I'm not going to talk much about what that talks about. I'm going to talk about more along what staff does. Part of that memorandum explained that there are different types of reviews. You got zoning matters, and then you have subdivision or site plan matters. And in that memo, it talks about legislative versus administrative. Those are all important things, but we're going to focus more on the steps staff takes when these things come in, or sometimes even before they come in. And that's what the focus for tonight will be. So the types of applications where we do some substantial review can be if it's a zone district change. Whoops, got to hit the button. There we go. Conditional use permits, overlay districts with conceptual plans, and combined applications where you have a zone district change and a subdivision, which is often the case where you've got land that's zoned agricultural and somebody wants to make a residential subdivision, you have to rezone it to the right zone, and then they do the subdivision. Or the same thing can apply in a new business sometimes if they're building on a lot that may be zoned B2 and it needs to be B3. So they'll do a request to change the zoning and then come in with the site plan. And then obviously independent new subdivisions or independent site plan reviews are all the types of applications we get. I will tell you that each of them have slightly different standards, but the process pretty much stays the same. It usually starts with a telephone call, similar to what the chamber was mentioning earlier. It's a phone call. Hey, I'd like to do this at this location. Is that allowed? Or I'm interested in, maybe developing here and it's just a conversation. The questions that I have in my mind when I'm talking to, is it a zoning matter? Does it implicate infrastructure reviews? Is it a combined matter where they have to zone and do a subdivision? And during that conversation, I kind of give them here's where it looks like you need to start focusing. So that they have an understanding of which applications they need to look at, which ones to review so they can be prepared when they do submit. And depending on how far along they are, sometimes they already have a layout on the land that they're looking at. We schedule a development conference. Now, if it's a zone district change, rezoning by itself with nothing else involved, the review is fairly limited, to be quite frank. I'm turning my pages and not turning yours. I apologize. They basically start at the very foundation of everything we do in zoning and planning in Smithville, and that's the comprehensive plan. Go look at, see what it says. What's the future land use plan map say? That's in the comprehensive plan. And then we use that comprehensive plan to provide our staff report as it relates to the 8 standards for rezoning. Every time you've seen a rezoning matter come before the planning commissioners that have done it, have seen it, and you all see it as well. There are 8 elements that have to be reviewed. We use the comprehensive plan to do that. We don't have to worry about traffic studies. We don't have to worry about infrastructure development that they have to do, because all they're wanting to do is to make the land available for those things. The easiest example is up on the hill, the old Virginia farmer tract that sits up on the hill south of here. That applicant came in with the request to change it from ag to B3 and R3 for apartments and zoning for businesses on 169. There was no need to do any substantial review because they don't have plans to build yet. They're waiting for that process. When that happens, we'll get into the more serious development review stuff. And that is what is in, sorry, again, the development process. We have standards that apply in any of the development processes. Subdivision code kind of identifies what most of those standards are. In the last 2 to 3 years, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but we have revised the site plan ordinance to incorporate subdivision standards in it so that a new business has to meet those standards. And we also amended it subsequent to that to include apartments. R3 multifamily has to go through the site plan review process. Standards are a little different for those, but they have to go through that process. If you've got a parcel of ground, for example, if you've got a parcel of ground that's zoned R3 and somebody wants to put apartments on it, prior to that change, it was a matter of they got a building permit and went because it was zoned for that. We've now changed it where they have to address some of the subdivision code requirements. And then earlier this year, we amended the code to trigger that same site plan review for conditional use permits. And in the site plan review ordinance, it refers back to the subdivision code. So we can make sure we address all the things in the subdivision code. The first step when an applicant formally comes to us with an application of some kind, or sometimes it's pre-application, but they've got a plan in place for a subdivision or a development of some type. We have what's called the Development Review Committee. It's identified in our code. Currently, it's Chuck Souls and myself, and we bring in Dave Klein at the Smithville Area Fire Protection District to address issues when they are required from him. Sometimes Chuck brings in streets or water and sewer guys to address some of the issues when we're looking at it and looking at their draft layouts, what we're doing. Usually at those meetings, not only do you have the applicant, but you also have their architect, engineer, surveyor, whoever did the design, so that they know what our concerns are and we can identify what technical studies will be required. The technical studies are things like water, sewer, et cetera, and we'll go into that here. So the 4 primary areas are the water system, the sewer system, sanitary sewer system, excuse me, stormwater studies, and traffic impact studies. Those are the 4 primary technical studies. We can theoretically ask for any technical study depending on the vagaries of what we're dealing with. If we've got a site that we know has phase 1 and phase 2 environmental type situations, we can require that process to be completed so we can make sure that we're not putting or approving a residential subdivision on a toxic waste dump, for example. Just need to make sure we do those things. The biggest thing that Chuck and I consider when we're discussing these is how big is the project? What's the impact on our system? And we then evaluate those studies. All projects have to have some level of a stormwater study. Sometimes they're one little letter that our engineers review and approve. Sometimes it's a full-blown study that shows the entire drainage basin and where it goes and how they're planning on keeping that water from flooding somewhere else. And then traffic counts. The TISs can be required. As we've recently discussed, 50 peak hour, trips or 500 daily trips on any project would trigger a study. If it's close to that number, we can then ask that the applicant have a traffic engineer submit a trip generation report that identifies all the uses that are going to be proposed and what that generates so that we can get those numbers. If they exceed those 5,500, obviously we're going to do the full study. If they don't, then no studies required. As you've heard before, and I'll reiterate it here, our standards of 50 peak and 500 daily is the most stringent around. Usually they're 100 and 1,000. So we require more stuff sooner than other jurisdictions around us. For a water system study, all projects that include a water line extension will get an updated hydraulic analysis model provided by our city's engineer. They have the model, they run it, they add stuff to it so that we know what the water pressures and flows and all that will be. The applicant and their engineers have to provide enough information for the anticipated needs to be identified. If it's a subdivision, it's pretty clear. They've got formulas the DNR has, and this residential subdivision, and these are each house, this is how much water they're going to need. Here's much fire flow, all those things. But if it's a business, for example, we went through a lot of process when the medical marijuana factory was coming in, because we didn't know what they were going to need. Give us the information. We need to know if we've got enough water and enough sewer, all those things. So that's what we did there. If during that process, the model shows that it doesn't meet flow standards, the applicant's got to raise the water flow to that area to our standards to make it work. This is where the fire district is most concerned. They're the ones that have to make sure the hydrants are in the right location and all that. So they're going to want to make sure when they open it up, it's got enough flow, pressure and flow to actually put out a fire. That's what the system does. And that's what this process is. Generally, we're in really good shape on our water system. 8-inch lines generally do what we need them to do. So then the next are the sanitary sewer system studies. They can be they have to analyze for both the daily peak flows so that when everybody comes home from work and they're, showering from work or whatever it is, and they start using a lot of water, all that's going into the sanitary sewer system. We need to make sure it's not just going to overflow. So we need to know what the peak flows are and what the daily flows are going to be. Their studies often have to be able to predict what's going to happen in our system as it exists to make sure we'd ever run over capacity. It could require additional offsite work depending on the circumstances. That study would tell us that. If it requires a lift station, which we try to avoid if at all possible, or if it's going to drain into an existing lift station, there are additional evaluations that are required. Last week's retreat, we talked about one of those scenarios substantially, and that's the North Force Main. That whole area has got limited capacity. They're doing studies now for the stuff up there that we just got an application for Friday. So all that studying is being performed now. Chuck has got his guys going to meet their engineer on site at one of the stations that they have to study so they can evaluate it, take a look at it, get the depths, all the stuff that they need to know to do their evaluation. Find out what's on site, figure out what they've got to do to upgrade it. And then that's when upgrades or other offsite improvements can be triggered through that study. One of the other aspects is when they have to make these improvements. Sometimes causing a major upgrade well before it's needed can cause other problems down the road that we don't want to have to deal with. So we phase these things in. The other benefit is it allows the developer to phase it in when I need to have it, it's here. When they're not building a Taj Mahal system for us that they'll eventually build in year one, they can build it in year 10 over time. What is it? Oh, sorry. So snooze or dismiss? Sorry. Also, during this evaluation process, we can make a determination if the improvement costs will need to be shared with other developments. If there's another development similar, same time frame, we can calculate what each site's going to need. And obviously, the North Force Main is our biggest concern in town. It's the one with the most capacity issues. Stormwater. This one comes back and forth with sometimes a very significant vitriol from citizens. Rightly so. It can be very frustrating. Every project in town requires a stormwater analysis, whether it's a subdivision or a site plan review. There has to be some level of a stormwater analysis. And this is where the impact and location of the project is that our engineers can, hey, we need more here, or no, we don't need a full one because you're in the floodplain already, that kind of thing. Once they make that assessment, they'll recommend any changes that are necessary. And those studies often include detention basins where they have to hold the water on site and slowly let it leave. Our standard is if you build something that puts impervious rooftops, streets, driveways, et cetera, if you're putting impervious material in, that means that water isn't going to soak into the ground. It's going to run somewhere. Our standard is after the development is built, this subdivision cannot have more water leaving it in a faster rate of time. It has to, if the water leaves the site during the initial part of with no development at, 1,000 cubic feet per second, whatever it happens to be. When they do all the development, they have to figure out how they're going to develop it so that it stays at 1,000 or below. They can't speed the water up, throw more water off on the neighbors. All that does is flood. And the city's engineer has to certify that plan meets it. So once we get the certification from them, they give us the thumbs up, we can move forward. The last.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes.
How do you do that study to know how much is leaving, like rainwater or whatever? How do you do that?
Chuck, let me.
It's a whole class on hydrology.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah, they actually have books that have standards and levels of.
Yeah, we know the rainfall
Okay,
per hour. And they develop hydrographs so that they can tell how fast the water's running off. I mean, it's all theory. I mean, there's no
Yeah.
measurement. And depending on the soil, there's impervious.
whether it's
saturation
clay
levels,
or
whether it's clay or
topsoil.
pervious or,
Okay.
yeah, and yeah, it's usually a study.
Okay.
Most of it's just they plug it in a computer and the computer runs the model
Okay,
and then it comes out and then what they try to do, like Jack said, we can't release it any faster. There's obviously going to be more,
mhm.
but they have to hold it and it can't run downstream any faster. So usually they build a detention basin, they size a pipe so that it doesn't leave the site any faster, and they hold the rest of it.
Okay, thank you.
The next big study issue that we deal with are traffic impact studies or TISs. Again, this is a scenario where trip generation determines the necessity of the study or not. Some of them are easy for us to even look at, non-traffic engineers. If it's got 50 houses in a subdivision, it's going to meet the standard. Because 50 trips and 500 daily trips are the standard. It's going to meet it just with 50 houses. If it's below that, it doesn't meet the standard for a study, so we don't require one. It's a little more difficult for us if it's a commercial project because I'm not a traffic engineer. I don't think Chuck would hope to be doing that. It'd take him a while. He could do it. It'd just take him a while because he doesn't do it all the time. But they'd go to the book and here's the trip generation report for this type of development, whatever it happens to be. Assuming one's required, then we start off with, give us your proposed scope of work. Which intersections you're gonna study, what roads are gonna be so that we can see what their thinking is on it. And then we'll look at it in conjunction with our engineers who do our reviews and say, yeah, that's all they need. They may need to do an additional intersection that they were hoping they weren't gonna have to do. Ultimately, once all those are identified, we cut them loose, do your study. Then they kick back a TIS that we then look at. And in those TISs, they all have a recommendation of these are the improvements necessary to handle the traffic. Sometimes it's a turn lane. Sometimes it's an additional lane. We don't know what they're going to be until that process is done. We also have, Chuck and I have MoDOT to deal with on state highways. So we have to kind of work through that process with them as well, because sometimes MoDOT will say, yeah, that sounds good. And then somebody new comes and now they need more studies done. We've had that happen recently. So we have to work with them through the process as well. We also want to know if it's a recently annexed area, we want to deal with the county, make sure they're aware of what's going on, their understanding of what's this going to do to your roads? So we can coordinate our studies at that point too. And I got ahead of myself on slides. I apologize. And again, in a TIS, the information we get will let us know when those things have to occur. So the first phase of it may be 40 houses and it may not trigger any turn lanes or anything like that. So if they're gonna, but as soon as they get to phase 2, it will, because it's gonna be at 51 or 55 or whatever it happens to be. We can put it in a development agreement phase that before you can start phase 2, you gotta give us the turn lane, or you gotta, whatever we need to make sure that none of the traffic gets backed up because of it.
Can they opt to go ahead up front if they so choose? If it's something's gonna be needed down the road, have you ever?
As long as it
seen
doesn't cause us other issues when they do it, I would think we would allow it. It's cheaper for them. Although not likely going to have a lot of that, especially in residential because of the cost of stuff. Because they're going to have to figure out how to divide that up over the lots they're selling to try and make their money back. But yes, they can. Water or sewer in particular can cause bigger problems if they open it up and they've got a giant pump station that's got a giant pipe that doesn't get filled before the pumps kick on, or they only kick on for a bit. It doesn't do us much good if we've got to go out and re-maintain or beef up the maintenance of a pump in a pump station that's not working because it doesn't have enough flow. Once they do all these studies, then Chuck and I will evaluate and identify, here's all of the improvements he needs. And we work with the timing of all that to start the first draft of a development agreement. And we work on that for a while. And then we give that to the developer and say, here's our development agreement. This is what we need. They will sometimes just say, sounds great, thank you. Sometimes they're like, can we move this around a bit? I don't want all of the heavy lifting to do in phase 2. Can we do some of it in phase 1 and some of it in phase 3? So that it lessens the immediate burden. We negotiate that with the sole goal to make sure that we don't blow up our capacity, don't screw up our roads, our water, any of that. That's what we look at. When we get that through that process, we come to a development agreement, and that gets submitted to the Planning Commission as a part of whatever the study's going to be. This is also where we bring in the parkland requirements. We have parkland dedication requirements in the subdivision code for residential uses. There's a formula in it, and the way it works out, we just have to go through step by step. Here's what they're proposing. Here's when it happens. Here's what the code says. And we put that in the development agreement as well. Usually, of late, it's been, here's your fee. We don't need any of your land. It's not something we're looking for in the master plan, the Parks Master Plan. So, and if it's not even for trails for us or anything, there's a formula of how they count the land, all that, and then they pay us the fee in it. All those fees are paid when they file a final plat. So if there's a 7-phase development, they only pay those fees when they record the final plat for each phase as they go. Reasoning being, there's nobody that needs to have park uses, all 7 phases paid up front. So when the houses are getting ready to come on, they need to pay those fees so the city can start preparing to upgrade the area parks with those funds. Once we've done all the studies and we've got a development agreement, we start the hearings. And what staff does for those hearings, they're all at the planning commission level. And they have to be noticed in the newspaper according to a state law and our ordinances. And all of the adjoining property owners within 185 feet have to be notified. That's mail notification. We, in Smithville, actually send certified letters, not required by state law, not required by our ordinance, but it's been that way since I got here. And years ago, I asked the planning commission, do they still want to continue that expense? And they said, yes. So that's what we do. Once those letters go out and it gets published in the paper, 15 days after that is when it has to be at least 15 days before the hearing is scheduled with planning commission. Brandy has a calendar book of deadlines, and so she knows when things have to be published, when the letters have to go out, if we're going to make this meeting. So that's the process we do it. We're also working on a process. We haven't got it fully developed yet, to include putting a sign on land affected so that anybody who's, if they don't live within 185 feet but drive by it every day, they'll have at least some notice of something's going on. It won't have the ability to have all the information on it, but they can at least call City Hall and find out. And then the Planning Commission conducts their hearing and makes a recommendation to you all. And when it gets to you, everything we've talked about should have already been completed. So you guys all the information is there for you to make a decision. That's what we do when we're doing our part of this process. There's a lot of steps, a lot of things to do. And sometimes the hardest thing for us, and particularly me, is to make sure I'm communicating the right information to the right people so that they understand what's going on. Sometimes you'll get your nose into the grindstone, focus on making sure you make all your deadlines, that all the other things don't get conversed as well. So we're working on that. Are there any questions?
I don't have a question. I just want to make a comment. I know sometimes people question why we don't have planning and zoning meetings every month. But when you go through this, there's times there's nothing to be presented to us. So
Correct.
it's
Right.
mute to have
Right.
a meeting when you have absolutely nothing
Right. Now,
for an agenda.
I will give you a heads up. Sometimes, likely in the future, we'll be discussing an internal scenario when we get fully into the ADU scenario. At that point, if there's no application, we're still going to need to have the planning commission meet. But we don't want to just create stuff to create work for the planning commission, because they're all just citizen members, most of them, obviously. some-
Regular business is application driven, as we've
Yeah.
said, and there are, like Jack said, times where we need work sessions, for lack of a better term, for the planning commission to provide some input on potential changes as
Well,
well.
just like we did recently with the R1s, or we come up with a smaller
Mhm.
lot size,
Sure,
when we added that. So there's other things that go on beyond what you have shared here.
sure.
Just what does the market saying right now or indicating, and how does that affect our zoning
Right.
and everything we do? So
And-
there's other things that could come up, like I said, for a work session possibly.
Right. And one of the things, for example, in some of those the things you've identified, those were held at the end of a meeting following applications. So we had applications that were reviewed, and then we discussed the zoning code changes or the subdivision code changes. So that we can, if the applicant doesn't want to listen to the conversation, the applicant can leave, but we still have business to conduct. Any change to a zoning code that is proposed has to also meet that standard of notification with published in the paper at least 15 days before the hearing. And unless the zoning proposed affects only certain property, no letters go out to adjoining neighbors. If we're, for example, if we're going to change the standards that apply to a B3 district, we don't have to notify everybody in the B3 district and everybody around the B3 district. We do a general notification. Hey, we're looking at the B3 stuff so that they understand it and they can come, public comment at a public hearing, and go from there.
Yeah, thank you for that thorough review. There's a lot there. And again, kind of going over legislative and administrative. I think this is good to do this in a work session, and I think we're going to have to continue to just communicate these processes. What people sometimes misconceive or misunderstand is like, it gets to us and it's like, well, we didn't hear anything about it. But yet our staff has been incredibly busy. They've followed the statutes of notification. The other piece that's very interesting is that we talk a lot about attainable and affordable housing, and this is a factor in that because the cost to the developer and you know, for the record, most of that's front loaded, so the developer's carrying that, eventually does get passed along to the individual that buys that home if it is a lot scenario.
Sure.
And it's not, I think unless you're involved in it all the time, there's some of us that have been involved in it with particular clients. It can be a very expensive process up front. I mean, from the engineering to the studies to the traffic study and all of that. In the end, if it passes and the aldermen approve it and the project becomes reality, is factored into the cost of that lot. So it's and a lot of times people think this is fast track. There's nothing fast about this. This can.
A lot of it happens because it happens out of the public view because it's technical engineering stuff being performed by technical engineers. Chuck's an engineer, but I can tell you, he's not real happy if he would have to do a traffic study. We review them. He and I both review every one of them that comes in to look to see if we see something that doesn't seem right. They're missing something, that kind of stuff. But we also have traffic engineers that do traffic all the time looking at these things too. So a lot of that stuff, here's the study, but you know, unless you're a traffic engineer, a lot of it doesn't make sense. Unless you've seen it happen regularly and you know kind of what they're looking at. So.
In correct me if I'm wrong, but every municipality in the state of Missouri goes through this process of some form or fashion based on state statute.
Yeah, if they're dividing land, they have to go through the subdivision requirements that are in state law. If they're rezoning, they have to go through the state law requirements as well. Now, cities often add more requirements because it protects the city a little more. It also guides the development types you want. It also lessens the burden on existing citizens and puts it all on developers. You can weigh that, you can balance that. We do impact fees for water and sewer because those are issues that we have to resolve. And if we've got to put in a bigger line because more people are going to be using it, we need those impact fees to do it. Okay.
Any other questions for Jack? Really? Man, letting you off easy, Jack.
I put you to sleep.
It's riveting stuff. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mayor, I have a question real quick, if I may.
It's a work session. We don't have a new business. Is it related to the agenda item?
Yes, it is.
Okay, go for it.
It's a update. It's a kind of just a clarification on the agenda item number 2 with the Chamber Services contract. I'd mentioned the possibility of having a monthly, kind of like an update to the aldermen And I think that would probably be good if we could look at that again. I know that with the mayor meeting with the economic development representative and Chamber of Commerce member every other day, I think that at least the aldermen and the citizens need an update at least once a quarter. So I think that's something that we should definitely look at, just update on how things are going.
Gina, your meeting's streamed in public, correct? Y'all are welcome to attend. And any other, there's no new business, so can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn work session.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Stand adjourned. 14 minutes.